Hi, my name's Sean O'Connell. I'm a professor in the history discipline at Queen's in the School of History, Anthropology, Politics and Philosophy. And I'm here today just to talk to you for about 15 minutes or so about studying history at Queen's University. So I hope to give you as much information as you might need. Okay, so you might want to think first about why Queen's University. What's special about Queen's? Well, it's highly ranked. It's part of the Russell Group, which you've probably heard of, which are the top 24 research-intensive universities in the UK. And it's very well respected throughout the globe in terms of global rankings. It's in the top 250 universities, which, when you consider the literally tens of thousands of universities that there are in the world, is a significant feat in itself. It's also ranked very highly in terms of graduate prospects, in terms of the career outcomes of the graduates of Queen's, and importantly as well in any of your thinking, I guess, is it's Belfast itself is a city that has the lowest rents for students in the UK. So, in terms of cost effectiveness of studying, Queen's is significantly advantaged. If you come to the campus, if you have the opportunity to visit the campus, you'll see that it's actually quite a beautiful campus. It's a mixture of the old 19th century buildings like the Lanyon buildings and some very striking modern buildings and some reworkings of some of those older buildings. The building on the bottom right-hand corner of your slide there is, well, there's two buildings. One is a rework of the old library, which is a fantastic new building, which houses the PFC, which is one of our main teaching sites, and also houses law. And just to the left of that is the old library, literally the library from the 19th century, which is now the postgraduate student centre. So some really striking buildings. It's a very attractive campus. So why history? Well, the number of things for you to think about. Why study history at Queen's? One of the things to do is, if you know anybody who studies history at Queen's, is to actually talk to them. Find out from somebody who's actually been on the course and get it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. If you can't do that, then look at some of the surveys which are carried out every year. The National Student Survey asks students about their experiences in the courses right across the UK. And history at Queen's has traditionally come out very well from that, consistently over 90% in terms of student satisfaction from our students. So I think we're getting something right, and hopefully when you listen to some of the details that I discussed today, you'll see how that has been achieved, how that satisfaction has been achieved. We have an emphasis on small group teaching. So, ideally 12, sometimes 15 in a tutorial. So there's a close attention to you as an individual, and you're not lost within a crowd of others in the tutorial experience. And also we have an emphasis on, right from day one in first year, of students who arrive being taught by our expert lecturers. So you are taught by the professors, you are taught by the senior lecturers, the people with experience, particularly important, I think, in first year, particularly important in the conversion from studying at A-level to arrival at university, that you have experienced individuals guiding you through that process. And that's something that we're very proud of in history. And it's not something that's you will find right across the board. So it is something that's a little bit significant in terms of history at Queen's. As a group of historians, we're very successful, and that success is reflected in our success in what's called the Research Excellence Framework, which is every 6 years in the UK. All the research in all the different departments in all the different universities is assessed by experts, and Queen's came out very well in that in the last REF exercise, coming in the top 10 in the UK for what's called the research intensity. So we're doing very well at that level, as well as in terms of the teaching scores that we get at NSS. And that's reflected in our global rankings. We are in the top 200 history departments in the world. And again, that's a significant achievement when you think about there are about 150 history departments in the UK alone, another 10 perhaps in the Republic of Ireland, hundreds and hundreds in the US and Australasia, etc., etc. Queen's is doing very well to be in the top 200 within the world. And it's a degree which has a focus, as I'm going to talk as we move through the slides now, it has a strong focus on employability. So we're thinking about how we develop your skills, how the skills of a historian are developed, and how that helps with you, helps you in terms of employability at the end of the day when you have graduated. Okay, again, why history at Queen's? The range of expertise that we offer. You'll find that you can study anything from ancient history through to very recent 20th century historical events. The geographical range is very wide, from Africa, Asia, North America, and of course, Ireland and Britain. We take a number of approaches. You might be interested in political history, and that's fine. You can concentrate on that at Queen's. Or you might find that you're really quite interested in social or economic history or gender history. And we have a lot of strengths in those areas, which I'm going to indicate in the next few minutes. Of course, Irish history is a strength at Queen's. We are a university on the island of Ireland, but we're also very strong in British history, European history, and North American history in particular. Recent books by some of our historians here on this slide, which indicate the kind of range of things which are being carried out, the research and teaching at Queen's. So you can have a look at those and reflect on those, and they show you the diversity of the themes that people explore at Queen's, and the chronological period which is explored from ancient Rome through to modern America there, if you look at those examples. If you want to study single honours history at Queen's, that's fine, that's great, but you can also think about joint degree possibilities. And there's a number of options available to you. The slide explains those to you, gives you a sense of those there. And if you want to chat to any of us about that, then please feel free to do so, either by emailing myself or by talking to one of my colleagues at the Open Day Forum, which is going to be arranged online in association with the Open Day. Okay, so talking a little bit about course structure now, beginning with the first year, level 1, and I'm going to use, for each of the years, I'm going to use an example of one of the modules to help you understand the type of things that we do at each level. In level 1, what we're trying to do is it's an introduction to skills and to get people used to working as an undergraduate student as opposed to an A-level history student. One of the modules which I think is really interesting at level 1, and which I wish I'd have done when I was an undergraduate student myself, is called History and Historians. It's a great module, and it's won teaching awards from the university. It's a module which is about contested pasts, and also about the relationship between academic history and public history. That's history on television, history in museums, etc. And each year, the students on the module look at a number of controversial areas of history. So you might look, for example, at the history of slavery, or the history of the Crusades, or the history of the Vietnam War, or the history of the Holocaust. And you think about all of those, and why are they contested? What are the debates? How are historians discussing and debating those issues? So, most controversially, how do some individuals who call themselves historians deny the Holocaust? The Holocaust denying historians, I say that in quotation marks. How is it possible for them to make their arguments, and why do they make their arguments? So there's the intellectual academic history side of that, and then there's the public history side of that. How would we as historians get those complex ideas out there in terms of public history, either in terms of television documentaries or museum exhibitions, etc. And one of the things that the students do on the module is to work in small groups to develop pitches to an imaginary museum, to an imaginary television company that will, you will work, for example, to present an idea to a television company to explain the history of race and slavery. You know, how many episodes will be in this documentary series? What will they look at? What ideas will they present? What kind of themes will they present? So you're doing the very difficult task of thinking about academic history in relation to public understandings of history and public history. And in the process, you're developing a lot of key skills, a lot of transferable skills that employers will be really interested in. You know, the negotiation of group work, the development of presentational styles, synthesis of ideas, being able to identify key things that you need to include in the pitch, communication skills. You know, lots of things that go on in this module, which is, you know, right at level 1, which are very significant and important for you to take forward with you into the world of employability after you've graduated. And employers will be very interested in these kind of experiences that you have. So I'm not going to talk about the other modules at level 1. We can talk about those if you want. You can look at the website, or your school website, or you could communicate with me via email if you want to discuss some of the other modules that we offer at level 1. At level 2, we have 2 different types of module. We have survey modules, which look at you know, broad areas of history, you know, 20th century British history, 19th century Irish history, 20th century Irish history, American history in the 19th century and the 20th century, or a module like this one, Europe Between the Wars, which looks at, as you can see, it takes a kind of a thematic approach to understanding interwar Europe, and it's particularly interested in the kind of authoritarian regimes in interwar Europe, so Nazi Germany, the Soviet Union, Franco's Spain, and fascist Italy. So it's a very popular module, as you might imagine, and it's very innovative in its use of things like film as source and novels as source to understand and interrogate aspects of Europe between the wars. And then at level 2, we also have modules which, again, are thinking about employability, very employability focused. And the idea in creating these modules was to develop ways in which our students could develop, if you like, evidence and stories for their CVs and for their job interviews in the future. You know, when they were explaining to employers what skills they developed as a history student, a module like this one enables them to make that a simple task, to make it understandable for employers. So this is a module which, recording history, this example is a module which involves students going out and doing all history interviews. So they're initially developing a lot of skill in that respect. They're having to train to use the technology, train to become interviewees, think about the ethics of all history interviewing, and then go out and conduct the interviews, professionally transcribe them, and then they work in groups to think about how they can then go to the BBC here in Belfast and pitch to BBC producers. They use the interview and materials from the interviews to pitch ideas for radio documentaries to BBC producers. So this is very tough, this task that the students are asked to perform. But it's a module that I actually teach, so it's the highlight of my academic year, teaching the module and going and watching the students pitch and come up with some really brilliant ideas, and on many occasions really wow those BBC producers with their ideas about what is going to be a good documentary and how it's going to work. And so far we've managed to convince the BBC to convert 2 of the ideas into BBC documentaries. So you can see on the slide there Ryan Mallon, who was one of the students who was successful with a pitch called A Diamond in the Rough, which is the story of Jimmy Hasty, a one-armed footballer. And it's if you want to look it up on the BBC Sounds app, then you can find the documentary. You can have a listen to it. It appeared on Radio Ulster and also on BBC Radio 5 Live, and it won awards. So you can imagine that that's great for any student's CV, and it's also great for their CVs, even if they don't get selected. Their pitch isn't accepted by the BBC because they are actually be able to say on their CV as well, you know, I've been to the BBC, I've pitched to BBC producers for a documentary idea. That's the kind of thing that's going to make an application, a job application, stand out. Well, that's interesting. That's an important skill. That's an unusual skill, an unusual experience that this student has had. So there's a list of some of the other level 2 modules. Again, I won't go through them. You can have a look for details on the website, or you can contact me via my email, and I'm happy to give you more information if you want. So level 3, we move on to more specific topics. These are the topics that are the individual historians, the modules that they offer are based around their particular research expertise. So an example here is Protestants in Ulster, taught by my colleague Andrew Holmes, who's an expert in the area. It's a thematic approach. It's looking at the history of religion in particular and its importance in Ulster over the last 2 centuries. It would be of interest to many of you. It would be of interest to whatever you think you know about the history of religion in Ulster. You can learn a lot from this module, and it's the kind of example of where our expertise as historians really comes to the fore. And by the time that you've got to 3rd year, you'll have your own kind of interests and own areas that you want to follow and pursue. And you'll see one of the strengths of the degree is the amount of choice and the range of choice that we offer, so that you really can find a little niche for yourself and pursue that if that's what you want to do. So this is some examples of some of the other 3rd year modules. Hopefully you'll get a sense of the different types of expertise that we have there. Lots of modules, for example, on the history of race or in relationship to race. Lots of modules on the Cold War, political history modules, social history modules. There really is quite a broad range. Now, the highlight of the 3rd year for most students is the dissertation, and this is the highlight of the degree. Really, it's the pinnacle of the degree in history, because it's where you bring all the skills together, really. So you have a 10 to 14,000 word dissertation to write. You're using primary sources, you're using secondary sources. You begin by negotiating with a supervisor. I'd like to do this topic, I'd like to look at this question. And the supervisor will say, that's a great idea. Or the supervisor might say, well, that's not such a good idea. Have you thought about this? So it's a process of negotiation, but you'll think about, an aspect of whether it's ancient history, medieval history, modern history, and then you'll pursue that in your own research. You'll go out there, you'll do the secondary reading, then you'll go and find some primary sources, and you'll slowly start to become the expert in this area. You'll draft initial chapters, you'll get feedback on those chapters from the supervisor, and then at the end of the day, what you'll have is hopefully a beautifully, wonderfully crafted historical argument over 10 to 14,000 words that's professionally presented and looks absolutely wonderful, and is, it's the highlight for many students, the highlight of their university experience and something they're really proud of. Importantly, it's something that you can take to employers and say, I'm able to synthesize ideas, I'm able to do research, I'm able to write well and communicate effectively, I'm able to structure an argument, I meet deadlines, I meet targets, I present work professionally. So it's the embodiment of a range of important skills that the history degree is going to develop for you. Okay. As well as studying the modules that we have on offer, there's a lot of other opportunities associated with the degree. You might explore some of the international opportunities that are available to study with the Erasmus scheme. There's a number of European destinations that you can head off to. You can see them on the map there. And there are also opportunities to study in the USA and also in Canada and Australia. So why do a history degree, apart from, I think, hopefully I've explained already that it'd be a great deal of fun, a great deal of interest, and a very challenging degree. But, a lot of people today think about employment, and that's very important and significant also. So, the thing to think about with a history degree, as in any good humanities degree, is that 60% of graduate opportunities are available to the history student. When you've graduated, you have important skills in terms of research, communication, the ability to work independently, the ability to analyse and evaluate. So they're very important and transferable skills, and give you a great deal of flexibility in terms of career destinations. So I'm going to give you some examples now of the kind of areas which our students have headed off into. The people on there are all kind of famous historians, as it were, but you're probably interested in what have history degree students from Queen's, where have they ended up and what type. So some examples on the slide there hopefully give you a sense of the range of things which our graduates do. And you can see there's a kind of a common theme, which is around communication, the ability to communicate, the ability to research, the ability to analyse. These are skills which aren't going to go away. The importance of those skills aren't going to go away. Some jobs might disappear in the future, but we will always need good communicators, good researchers, people who can analyse and write and do that effectively to a very high level. And that's what the history degree at Queen's will produce. And there's some other examples of some of our recent students and where they have ended up. As you can see, they tend to end up in doing things and doing jobs that sometimes I'm not sure myself what the job means, because the definition around employment and the kind of different concepts around employment is changing very much all the time as we move into a more kind of web connected, internet connected world. For example, we're seeing lots of individuals working in those kind of areas, those kind of online research or communication or PR style areas. We're also seeing still a lot of individuals heading off into roles with the civil service, for example. Ian Hunter there, who's now the director of his own company in California, began working with Invest NI and ended up working in their office in California. So he's probably of the graduates that I'm aware of, got the most kind of glamorous location, certainly at the moment. And we have a number of individuals like Alex McCabe there who end up working in areas that you wouldn't think that historians would end up, and that's kind of working in terms of finance, accountancy and what have you. But all of those finance companies and those accountants companies and even the big engineering companies, etc., they all need people who didn't do accountancy or finance for their first degree or engineering for their first degree. They need people as well who also have the skills that the historians can offer. Otherwise, their companies would become very one-dimensional and bland. Engineers aren't particularly necessarily good at communication or the type of research that historians are good at, and the big engineering companies like Rolls-Royce employ historians as well. So there's a real significant range of areas where our graduates end up. Okay, so that's the end of my talk today. I hope you've found it useful and interesting. As you can see, there's a number of ways of getting in touch. Please feel free to get in touch with me directly if you want. My email address will be found on the first slide. And so I'll say goodbye to you and hope that you, whether you come to Queen's or not, you have a successful and happy future. So thank you very much, and goodbye for now.